Well, I think the most important influence my parents had on me in terms of my life's work.
Something happened behind the cameras of The Mary Tyler Moore Show that almost no one outside the cast ever heard about. The series already had its share of controversies, backstage tensions, and cast members carrying heavy private battles. But none of those surprises matched the one moment whispered about among the people who were there. A single controversial blooper, which revealed something no audience was ever meant to see. What really happened on that set? And why did the people who witnessed it stay silent? The making of The Mary Tyler Moore Show. When The Mary Tyler Moore Show premiered in 1970, no one expected it to change television the way it did. The concept came from James L. Brooks and Alan Burns, who wanted to create a sitcom centered on a single woman navigating her career, friendships, and personal life in a Minneapolis newsroom. At a time when TV shows rarely placed unmarried, working women at the center of a story, their idea felt bold, almost too bold for the era. Unlike the traditional American sitcoms, the lead character, Mary Richards, wasn't written as a sidekick, a love interest, or a stereotypical sitcom wife. She was independent, career-focused, smart, and navigating adulthood on her own terms. The show signaled a shift in how women could be shown on television and opened the door for a new kind of storytelling. But even before filming began, the project ran into pushback. CBS worried that making Mary a divorcee would offend viewers, especially conservative audiences who viewed divorce as controversial. To avoid trouble, the network insisted the character be rewritten as single due to a broken engagement instead. That small change sparked huge discussions across the industry. People debated why television was afraid of portraying a modern woman honestly, and the conversation only fueled interest in the show before it even aired. Mary Tyler Moore was already familiar to audiences from The Dick Van Dyke Show, where she had charmed viewers with her comedic timing and warmth. Producers knew she could carry a series on her own, and she quickly became the heart of the new show. Her ability to make Mary Richards relatable, funny, and quietly strong became one of the main reasons the series connected so deeply with audiences. Of course, a show like this needed a strong supporting cast, and the team behind it put together one of the most memorable ensembles in TV history. Ed Asner stepped into the role of Lou Grant, the tough newsroom boss with a soft center that only slipped out in rare moments. His chemistry with Mary created some of the show's strongest scenes, balancing seriousness with humor without ever feeling forced. Ted Knight brought the character of Ted Baxter to life, an anchorman who was confident, dramatic, and hilariously clueless. His performance became one of the show's biggest comedic highlights. Viewers recognized the unique rhythm he brought to every scene, and Ted Baxter soon became one of the most iconic TV characters of the decade. Valerie Harper entered as Rhoda Morgenstern, Mary's best friend and neighbor. Her character was funny, outspoken, and instantly likable, and audiences connected with her so strongly that she earned her own spin-off, Rhoda. Rhoda's presence gave the show emotional depth and helped show the real, messy, relatable side of friendship that wasn't always present in sitcoms at the time. Cloris Leachman played Phyllis Lindstrom, Mary's quirky, unpredictable neighbor who added a sharp, unexpected, and slightly chaotic humor to the show. Her character was so memorable that she also spun off into her own series, Phyllis. Later in the show's run, Betty White joined the cast as Sue Ann Nivens. On paper, Sue Ann was the host of a cheerful homemaker program. In reality, she was sharp-tongued, sly, and surprisingly bold for the time. Betty White delivered the role with perfect timing, and her addition helped elevate the series even further. Behind the scenes, The production team approached the show in a way that made it stand out from the typical sitcoms of the era. The newsroom backdrop allowed writers to weave in topics that reflected real workplaces, including office politics, deadlines, sexism, and the struggles that come with trying to grow in a demanding job. Characters weren't locked into one personality or storyline. They changed, matured, and grew season after season, and this helped the audience form deeper connections with them. Success arrived quickly. The Mary Tyler Moore Show earned widespread praise and went on to win 29 Primetime Emmy Awards, an enormous achievement for a sitcom at that time. Critics called it one of the smartest shows on television, and viewers tuned in because they saw something different from the usual family-centered sitcoms. Its cultural impact only grew with time. The show influenced later programs like Murphy Brown, Sex and the City, and countless modern workplace comedies. It changed how women were portrayed on television and showed that a female lead could carry a show without relying on stereotypical roles. The show's success also sparked multiple spin-offs. Few sitcoms from the 1970s produced so many successful extensions, and even fewer shaped culture the way this one did. But while viewers saw a polished, heartfelt, groundbreaking series, what they didn't see were the internal battles happening during production, the disagreements, the tension, and the unexpected challenges the cast and crew dealt with behind the scenes. Battles behind the scenes. As polished as The Mary Tyler Moore Show looked on television, the work behind the scenes wasn't always smooth. The writers and producers were constantly balancing the desire to push the show forward with the reality of what American audiences were ready to accept in the early 70s. They wanted to introduce sensitive topics like workplace sexism, dating freedom, and the challenges women faced in professional environments. But they knew pushing too far could cause backlash. Every script became a careful negotiation. How far could they go without losing the viewers who weren't ready for big cultural changes? The writing team often found themselves moving slowly, taking one small step at a time rather than jumping into bold statements. It wasn't because they lacked ideas, but because the country was shifting at a cautious pace. The show had the potential to challenge norms, but network executives still worried about complaints from conservative markets. Episodes went through layers of discussion, adjustments, and rewrites just to make sure they landed properly. The team wanted to maintain the show's charm, while still nudging audiences into new territory. This same pressure carried into the relationships within the cast. While they had strong chemistry on camera, not everything behind the set was easy. Ted Knight, who played Ted Baxter, struggled with how his character was perceived. His role was designed to be silly, clueless, and exaggerated for humor. But Ted sometimes felt the character overshadowed his broader talent. He worried people saw him only as the bumbling anchorman and nothing else. And this frustration occasionally showed during production, creating tension as he pushed to be taken more seriously. Mary Tyler Moore also contributed to the tension behind the scenes. While she was committed to making the show the best it could be, her perfectionism became both an asset and a challenge. Co-workers admired her professionalism, precision, and dedication, but those same qualities sometimes wore people down. She expected the same level of excellence from everyone around her, and not all cast members handled that pressure easily. Some days were smooth and collaborative, other days felt tense because the bar had been set so high. As the show's success grew, money also became a sensitive issue. Several cast members began negotiating for higher salaries, and the conversations sometimes turned aggressive. CBS recognized the value of the ensemble, but the negotiations created friction, especially when some actors felt others were being favored. The success of the series meant everyone wanted compensation that reflected their contribution, But not everyone agreed on what that looked like. It was a difficult period where business and personal relationships overlapped. But the challenges didn't end there. The show's spin-offs, like Rhoda, Phyllis, and Lou Grant, were exciting opportunities for the actors involved. But they also introduced new problems. Creative teams debated whether CBS was trying to capitalize too heavily on the brand. Some writers worried the network was stretching the universe thin, while others believed the spin-offs could confuse the tone of the original show. Decisions about who got a spin-off and when they did also sparked discussions that didn't always stay friendly. But the biggest debate came when Lou Grant shifted from comedy to drama. Fans knew Lou Grant as the gruff but lovable boss from the newsroom, a character anchored in humor. And so, when the spin-off transformed him into the lead of a serious, issue-driven drama, it raised eyebrows. People inside the industry questioned whether the move betrayed the spirit of the original sitcom. Others argued it was a natural evolution and a sign of how strong the character actually was. The creative back and forth became a recurring topic, with supporters and critics voicing their opinions right up until the show aired. But not every challenge came from clashing personalities or business decisions. Some came from the content itself, moments and storylines that stirred controversy and pushed the boundaries of what television was willing to show at the time. The controversial side of The Mary Tyler Moore Show. For all its charm and warmth, The Mary Tyler Moore Show walked a thin line between breaking new ground and pushing too far for network comfort. The writers were ambitious, the cast was fearless, and the creative team wanted to explore topics few sitcoms touched at the time. But every time they tried to step forward, CBS was right behind them, with reminders about what primetime television could and couldn't handle in the 70s. One of the biggest internal debates revolved around an idea the writers floated during the show's run. An episode touching on a controversial, reproductive decision. They wanted to approach it with sensitivity, honesty, and emotional depth. But the moment the concept reached CBS executives, it was shut down completely. The network insisted it was far too controversial for a comedy series and warned that airing it could cause public backlash. The suggestion never even made it into a draft script, showing the writers just how tight the boundaries were, no matter how forward-thinking the show tried to be. Several other topics faced similar limits. Episodes that touched on religion or political humor were often scaled back during early script reviews. Jokes were softened, storylines were rewritten, and scenes were adjusted to avoid offending viewers who might take issue with even mild satire. The team knew the show had influence, but they also knew that pushing too hard could invite trouble in an era when audiences were still adjusting to rapid cultural change. Even when the topics seemed harmless by modern standards, the fear of complaints shaped what could make it onto the screen. One of the most controversial decisions the show made was the introduction of Betty White. When she joined the cast as Sue Ann Nivens, the sweet-faced homemaker with a sharp tongue and unapologetically flirtatious personality, the dynamic of the show shifted instantly. Sue Ann wasn't written to fit the typical nice neighbor role. She was bold and biting, and often delivered lines with a wink that carried clear undertones. Betty White played the character flawlessly, and her performance became one of the highlights of the later seasons. But not everyone embraced her right away. Some critics said Sue Ann pushed the boundaries of what family television should show in the mid-70s. The combination of perfect smiles and sly jabs was new territory for a sitcom, and conservative viewers weren't always sure how to take it. CBS received letters questioning whether the character was appropriate, and debates occasionally broke out among audiences about whether the show was drifting into risque humor. Still, Sue Ann stayed, and she became one of the most memorable parts of the series. Another controversy that grew louder over time was the show's lack of diversity. Even though the Mary Tyler Moore Show took place in Minneapolis, a city with a significant mix of communities, the cast was almost entirely white. At the time, this didn't draw much public criticism, but in later years, audiences and scholars pointed out the disconnect between the show's setting and its casting choices. For a program that challenged norms in many ways, the absence of diverse representation became one of the clearest reminders of television's slow progress. There were also conversations about how the show portrayed men. While the series was celebrated for giving women strong, independent roles, some critics observed that male characters often came across as incompetent, clueless, or overly emotional. Lou Grant and Murray Slaughter were exceptions, written with depth and consistency, but the overall pattern raised questions among viewers about whether the show was intentionally flipping traditional gender stereotypes. Supporters said it was harmless comedy, but others felt it sent the wrong message. The final episode of the show created its own debate among fans. In the finale, nearly the entire newsroom staff is fired. Everyone except Ted Baxter. The moment was designed to be bold and surprising, giving the audience something unforgettable to close out 7 years of storytelling. But the reaction was mixed. Some viewers appreciated the unexpected ending and the emotional farewell that followed. Others felt the mass firing was too bleak for a show known for optimism and humor. They argued it clashed with the tone that made the series special. Even years later, people still discuss whether the finale was the right choice, or if it pushed the show too far into dramatic territory. But while the public focused on the bold storylines and memorable moments, something else was happening away from the cameras. Behind the laughter, the cast members were dealing with struggles of their own, pressure, uncertainty, personal battles, and moments that shaped their lives long after the show ended. The struggles of the cast members. While the Mary Tyler Moore Show delivered laughter and warmth on screen, many of its stars were carrying personal battles that viewers never saw. Fame made them household names, but behind the applause were struggles that shaped their lives in ways the public only learned much later. Mary Tyler Moore faced some of the heaviest burdens. She lived with type 1 diabetes for most of her adult life, a condition that required constant monitoring. Even while filming long hours and maintaining the upbeat energy the show demanded, she managed her health quietly, without letting it interrupt the production. When she later became an advocate for diabetes awareness, people finally understood how much she had been handling behind the scenes. She also battled alcoholism, something she discussed openly after finding sobriety. During her years on the show, the pressure to perform, the stress of fame, and personal challenges all played a role in her drinking habits. Getting sober wasn't easy, but it became one of the most important turning points of her life. Her deepest heartbreak came in 1980, when her only son, Richie, died under tragic circumstances. The tragedy devastated her and remained one of the most painful moments of her life. Fans often remembered her as cheerful, confident, and full of life, but behind that image was a mother carrying a loss that never went away. Mary's personal life was also complicated. She married 3 times. Her first marriage ended early, and her later marriages came with their own difficulties. Balancing fame, family, and personal expectations added pressure to relationships that were already facing challenges. Ed Asner, who played Lou Grant, dealt with a different set of struggles. He became well known for his political activism, especially his outspoken views against U.S. involvement in Central America during the 80s. But his activism led to professional backlash. Some networks and industry leaders distanced themselves from him, and projects became harder to secure. His public stance earned respect from many, but created difficulties that affected his career long after the spotlight moved on. Ed also dealt with personal challenges. He went through 2 divorces, and his family relationships were sometimes strained. People knew him as the tough but lovable boss on television, but off-screen he faced the same marital pressures and emotional difficulties that many experience in private. As president of the Screen Actors Guild, Ed also clashed with industry executives over labor rights. He pushed for better protections and fair treatment for actors. But those battles were intense and often met with resistance. Advocating for change made him a respected figure among performers, but it also brought tension and conflict that followed him throughout his leadership. Betty White, whose cheerful personality made her seem unshakable, also lived through experiences that shaped her deeply. In 1981, she lost her husband, Alan Ludden, whom she adored. His death devastated her, and she never remarried. Even while she continued building her career, she carried that grief with her. But it didn't end there. Before her fame grew, Betty faced gender discrimination that shaped her early hopes. As a young woman, she wanted to become a forest ranger, but the position was closed to women at the time. It was a disappointment she never forgot, and it showed her early on how limited opportunities could be for women, even outside Hollywood. She also stood firm during a major racial controversy in the 1950s. When she featured black tap dancer Arthur Duncan on her variety show, some stations threatened to drop the program. Betty refused to remove him. Instead, she gave him more airtime. The backlash was real, but she stayed firm, showing early in her career that she was willing to take risks for what she believed was right. Ted Knight, who played the unforgettable Ted Baxter, dealt with battles that never showed on camera. While audiences saw him as the loud, confident, and hilariously clueless anchorman, the real Ted was facing a long, private fight. For nearly a decade, he silently battled cancer, keeping his diagnosis out of the public eye while continuing to work. Even during difficult treatments and declining health, he pushed himself to show up on set and deliver the performances fans loved. His illness eventually took his life in 1986, but most viewers never realized how much he had endured during his final years. His health wasn't the only struggle weighing him down. In 1974, Ted suffered a mental breakdown triggered by stress, exhaustion, and the pressures of fame. Reports from the time say he walked off a set in frustration, unable to manage the emotional weight he had been carrying. While the show presented Ted Baxter as a carefree character, the man behind the role was dealing with the cost of being constantly measured against the same comedic persona. Valerie Harper, who played the beloved and quick-witted Rhoda Morgenstern, also faced challenges that stretched far beyond the sitcom world. In 2013, she received a devastating diagnosis: leptomeningeal carcinomatosis, a rare and terminal form of brain cancer. Doctors gave her 3 months to live. Instead, Valerie defied every expectation and lived for 6 more years. Her determination became an inspiration to fans everywhere. But the battle itself was grueling, demanding constant treatment, monitoring, and emotional strength. Long before that, Valerie faced her own set of personal struggles. Her marriage to actor Richard Schall ended in 1978, a difficult separation that occurred at the height of her career. Balancing fame, work, and personal life took a toll. And Valerie had to navigate complicated emotions while continuing to appear in public with the same confidence and humor that defined her character. Later in life, the cost of her medical care created financial strain. Treatments and health needs were expensive, and even for someone with a successful career, the expenses became overwhelming. Cloris Leachman, who played the eccentric and unpredictable Phyllis Lindstrom, carried her own share of struggles behind the scenes. Though she often stole scenes with her comedic timing and dramatic flair, Cloris's personal life was far more challenging than her energetic performances suggested. She went through a divorce in 1978 after 25 years of marriage to George England. The separation left her raising 5 children, a task that required energy, patience, and resilience on a level most people never witnessed. The demands of single motherhood came at the same time she was trying to maintain a steady acting career. Cloris worked constantly, juggling television, film roles, and guest appearances to support her family and keep her career active. It was a balancing act that often stretched her thin, yet she rarely allowed those challenges to affect her work on screen. Her strong personality also led to industry conflicts. Cloris was known for having firm opinions and high standards, and she didn't hesitate to speak her mind. This sometimes created tension with directors and producers who were not used to actors challenging creative decisions. But Cloris wasn't being difficult. She simply had a clear vision for her work and wasn't afraid to defend it. Those clashes became a recurring part of her career, though they never diminished the respect she earned as a performer. And while the cast dealt with personal battles privately, another part of the series lived only in whispers. The hidden bloopers, lost moments, and off-camera clips fans didn't get to see, especially one controversial blooper that no one talked about. The controversial blooper moment. For a show as polished and family-friendly as The Mary Tyler Moore Show, one behind-the-scenes moment stood out more than any other. It happened during a flubbed take, when Mary Tyler Moore adjusted part of her wardrobe and made a joking remark about her chest, slipping in a word that definitely wasn't meant for primetime or studio archives. It came out fast, caught everyone off guard, and instantly filled the set with laughter. It was harmless in spirit, but for a production built on wholesome comedy, it became one of the most surprising and controversial bloopers ever captured on tape. What made it remarkable wasn't the remark itself, but who said it. Mary Tyler Moore had a public image as America's sweetheart, the symbol of smart, cheerful, modern womanhood. Seeing her break that image, even jokingly, clashed completely with how viewers were used to seeing her. And in the early 70s, when primetime avoided anything remotely risque, a playful reference like that stood out far more than it would today. The producers knew it couldn't air. The show's tone depended on staying light, clean, and friendly. And a blooper like that didn't match the image CBS wanted to project. Even though the cast burst into laughter, the moment was immediately cut and quietly tucked away. But that blooper wasn't the only memorable off-camera mishap the cast shared. Line flubs happened constantly. Ted Knight, who played the pompous but clueless Ted Baxter, often stumbled over the complex anchorman lines written for him. Some were tongue twisters, others were intentionally over the top, and Ted's attempts to deliver them without cracking a smile became a recurring challenge. His mistakes were so funny that the rest of the cast sometimes struggled not to break character themselves. Uncontrollable laughter was practically part of the job. Mary Tyler Moore, Ed Asner, and Valerie Harper were known for losing composure whenever a joke landed especially well. The writers had sharp comedic timing, and when a punchline hit harder than expected, takes regularly fell apart because the actors simply couldn't hold it in. There were also pranks, small, harmless jokes that kept the atmosphere light during demanding shooting days. In one memorable instance, Ed Asner and Gavin MacLeod surprised Mary by singing a playful tribute to her in the middle of filming. It wasn't part of any script, but a spontaneous moment of appreciation and humor from two co-stars who adored working with her. Physical comedy mishaps also made their way into the blooper archives. Props malfunctioned at the worst times, doors jammed when scenes called for dramatic exits, and furniture occasionally shifted or collapsed in ways no one expected. Mary's iconic hairstyle, which became part of her signature look, was even the butt of jokes when it wouldn't stay in place during long filming days. When this happened, the cast shifted smoothly into improv, turning potential disasters into unexpected comedic gems. Betty White added her own twist to the blooper culture. Playing Sue Ann Nivens meant leaning into a character with flirtatious humor, and sometimes Betty improvised lines with a sharper wink and nod tone than what the scripts allowed. Her co-stars struggled to keep straight faces whenever she went off script. Her delivery was too good, and her timing too sharp. Though some of her improvised moments were a little too bold for 70s television, they became favorites among the cast. Wardrobe mishaps were another source of on-set comedy. Skirts snagged on furniture, wigs tilted at odd angles, and costume pieces shifted at the worst moments. Instead of stopping the scene immediately, actors often tried to play through it, adding playful lines or gestures that sent the crew into silent hysterics behind the cameras. The cast members were professionals, but they were also people who didn't mind laughing at themselves. And while almost none of these bloopers ever aired, they became part of the show's off-camera legacy. The version of The Mary Tyler Moore Show only insiders got to see. Who was your favorite character on The Mary Tyler Moore Show? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.